been a fantastic weekend of sports, Brett. You and I are back with episode 59 of The Next Best Bet, and let's get right on into it. I mean, looking at hindsight with Higgins at how we did in episode 94, I went 4-3. The Chiefs game's going on right now as we're recording, so we'll see how that plays out. They did just score. We are midway through the third right now, but how'd you do?
Went 2-3. It's okay. But I was very proud of my Northwestern Wildcats not only covering but winning outright.
Absolutely. Let's get into our beginners boulevard because you could have potentially played this game as a example of the double result, which is a bet that is offered when you are betting on the score of the game at halftime and the end of the game. So let's take the Monday night game, for example, Rams versus Bucs. You could take the Rams in the first half and the second half. You could take the Bucs in the first half and second half, or one in the first half and the other in the second half if you think that it's going to go different ways. Uh, Plenty of different outcomes, so a little bit higher betting results coming back your way typically.
Yeah, and you can do this with a lot of sports, Higgins. You can do it usually after the first 5 innings in baseball. With basketball and college basketball is actually coming back this week. You can do it in college basketball. So, lots of ways to play the double result bet.
Yes, we don't have our typical Maction to talk about this week, but there is still some college sports to talk about. College football, there's a couple games going on Thursday. We'll get into it next episode. It's going to be very chock full of football. We'll get into that. But college basketball preview, Brett, because as far as we know right now, there's going to be games on Wednesday. We don't necessarily have lines to bet on for those individual games, but there are some overall championship previews. There's some conference championship previews. What teams have your eye right now?
I mean, you got to look at the top, and you got to be impressed by the roster Gonzaga has. Villanova's got a great squad coming back. Baylor should be competitive again. And then the classic teams that always reload, Duke, Kentucky. UNC, I expect to bounce back a little bit stronger this year. They have a slightly better recruiting class coming in than they had in the past few years. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, there should be a lot of good basketball coming up. Obviously, COVID's been the big story, Higgins, with all the programs having to stop practice and pause, and some have pulled out of tournaments based in South Dakota because of the COVID rate there. So, like you said, we'll have to follow this along. But as of right now, there is a top 25 matchup scheduled for Wednesday, Baylor and Arizona State. And I got to be honest with you, Higgins. I'm really excited for that one. That should be a great game.
Yeah, that should be a fantastic matchup. I mean, the first three teams that you mentioned at the beginning of your statement last was Baylor, Gonzaga, and Villanova. And depending on which ranking sheet you look at, they're in different orders. One has Gonzaga at the top, the other Baylor at the top, with Gonzaga and Baylor at two subsequently, and Villanova being the resounding number three right now. In the sports books, they're all plus 950 right now. So there's obviously a little bit of a top bar, and then there's a few others with plus 1000s. You look at the conferences, though, some of these are very tight, and then some, there's teams like Villanova who are already minus 120 to win theirs.
Yeah, I mean that was disrespectful to the Big East. I think Creighton has a very good team. UConn, the big story for UConn this year is they're back in Big East basketball, Higgins, and that's
Ooh.
really exciting for their fans. I'm sure it's exciting for Nova and St. John's fans as well because the Yukon rivalry is definitely more real than, with all due respect to Creighton and Xavier, and even DePaul, who's been in the Big East for a while now. But it's just a different level of bad blood when you're all, within 2, 3, 4 hours of each other, right there. Yukon, Georgetown, Nova, St. John's.
Now, I'm not going to find myself anywhere on these conference outright odds, Brett, but the ones that really look and are giving me a lot of attention right now are how contested the Big Ten the Pac-12 and even the Big 12, in a sense, are not just with their odds, but of the amount of teams they have in the top 25 right now.
Yeah, I think those are all great places to look. To be honest, I think the most wide open conference this year, Higgins, is going to be the Pac-12. The Pac-12, ASU is currently the favorite, plus 230 to win outright. UCLA got a lot better. Their biggest ad of the offseason was Johnny Juzang coming in from Kentucky. He was a big LA prospect coming out of high school, went to Kentucky for a year, played okay. Now he comes back home. Um, but I'll tell you who I love in this conference, Higgins, and that's Stanford. Stanford brings in top 10 recruit Zaire Williams. They had a decent team last year. I just think they're better than people expect. And they added a really strong recruiting class. And at plus 550, Arizona State isn't significantly that much better. Like they're better. Remy Martin, Joshua Christopher, those are players that can score the basketball. But I mean, Stanford should be favorites against Arizona State at home. So I would expect Stanford to compete. And then I also have a long shot because if you're going to take these conference odds, I would recommend pairing a favorite with a long shot. Just helps you out a little bit, gives you a little bit of a better chance. Arizona's my long shot. They're bringing in a lot of transfer players this year, Higgins. So that is something to be aware of. But three of them, Akinjo, Terrell Brown, and Jordan Brown. I mean, Akinjo was probably one of the best guards in the country before whatever happened at Georgetown happened at Georgetown. Jordan Brown was a top 50 recruit not too long ago before going to Nevada. And Terrell Brown was an all WAC player a year ago. So these are three big time transfers to come into Arizona. And we've seen how they've recruited in the past.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this Pac-12. I mean, living out here in Oregon, it's very much the hype. It's the right time zone for me to be watching games in, luckily. I love listening to Bill Walton. It's always hysterical to me to listen to those games. Some people love him, some people hate him. I'm
Well,
in the camp that it's always a treat to hear because it's so animated and crazy.
he
But
loves going to Oregon for sure.
a term that I have heard out here is the Pac-12 cannibalizes itself. And that's why the odds kind of reflect that because it's a brutal conference that there's a lot of competitive teams and competitive games and we'll see who ends up at the top, but it's going to be hard fought, that you know for sure.
Yeah, no, they have had a tendency to beat up on themselves a little bit in the past. I think that is going to probably transfer over to the Big 12 this year. There's Baylor, and then there's kind of everyone else. I'm leaning Texas Tech in this conference though at plus 750. Again, another team is going to rely on some transfers here and some good recruiting over the last few seasons. So it'll kind of be a blend of new guys who are a little bit older and young guys who have been in the system a little longer, which is kind of the opposite of what you expect in college sports. So I'm looking at Tech plus 750. I think they might have the best coach in the conference. I don't know. It's Bill Self, Chris Beard, and then probably everyone else in the comp. Oh, well, Huggins. Huggins is up there too, and that's reflected in the odds. West Virginia's plus 500, but Chris Beard at plus 750 seems like good value. I haven't found another team I like to put my money on in the Big 12, so
You haven't found the pair yet?
I haven't found the pair. Texas is very talented. They bring in a top 10 freshman, Greg Brown. Their point guard's entering his third year, Matt Coleman. So that's an interesting one. Maybe it's Texas and Texas Tech, but honestly, I'm still looking for that other team I want to take a shot on with Texas Tech in the Big 12. Kind of what you were saying. I just think there's a lot of parity.
And then the Big Ten has Iowa at the top with plus 240 odds, but the rankings are giving them a lot of favor. The AP has them at 5, and the coaches poll have them at 6. why aren't they getting more of the love like Virginia, who's plus 190 in the ACC, but they're right at 4?
Yeah, to be honest, Iowa's a really good team, but it's tough to pick. Similar how it's tough to pick against Kansas in the Big 12, Higgins. Like Kansas is like if I told you you can get MSU at plus 450, you'd have to think, wow, I can get Michigan State at 4-1. Like when does that happen? And Michigan State, brings in a top 50, a former top 50 recruit as a transfer, one of the Hauser brothers. The other brother, you mentioned the other school that he's at, UVA. So one went to Michigan State, one went to UVA. And
Okay.
they also have another top 50 recruit, Rocket Watts. So it's not like they haven't brought in any talent. I think Michigan State's as good of coach team as anyone in the country. And I also think the Illini might be the most talented team in the Big 10 this year. So seeing them at plus 340 and plus 450, I'm going to probably lean that way, Higgins, and put my money on those two teams to carry me through the Big 10 season this year. But there's, again, a lot of good teams in the Big 10 this year. Ohio State should be good. They added a great transfer from Harvard, Seth Towns. Michigan reloaded their roster a little bit, so they should be nice and competitive again. So there's no real runaway in the Big Ten, which is kind of why I'm leaning towards these teams towards the back end of the top four here.
Now, I will say I'm not going to be on any of these Wednesday games that I know of right now. First of all, we don't have lines for them or anything. There's the one top 25 matchup that we already mentioned, Baylor and Arizona State. But if you by chance aren't working on Wednesday, I mean, coronavirus has already spiked so many places across the country. Stay home and watch college basketball because, I mean, it's tipping off at 11 a.m. Pacific time, so 2 p.m. Eastern, and then it's running all throughout the night. You have tons of games to watch and be entertained by. I mean, Virginia kicks it off right at in that first round of games as well.
And there you go. Yeah. So why not watch some college basketball? Enjoy your Wednesday. And I look forward to college basketball getting back, a little bit of normalcy in our sports schedule. Everything was thrown off there for a little bit, Higgins. We had the NBA finals in August, but finally basketball at the time basketball should be being played.
Yes, we don't have college football, like I said, but we do have a taste of college football, and that's in our Moneyline Magic. Now, if you were watching this game, it was a barn burner. Tulsa versus Tulane. Now, Tulsa was number 25 in the country. It was a scoreless brawl of a game for the first two quarters. In the third, Tulane scores twice, and then Tulsa scores two in the fourth, with Tulane immediately taking the lead right back. But Tulsa, who had their backup quarterback in for most of that second half, Bryn, really played phenomenally, especially on that last drive, Brett.
Yeah, I actually think he was their third string quarterback, Higgins, if you could
Oof.
believe it. And
He
they
didn't
had
play
a
like
bit.
it. He didn't play like it.
They had a big fat zero going into that fourth quarter, and you mentioned it. He played lights out, and he played so well in that fourth, Higgins. We had to go all the way back to Thursday to grab our money line magic. That's how standout of a performance this game was. And why don't you tell us what happened here?
Yes, so they were down seven, and Davis Bryn throws a Hail Mary pass as time expires 37 yards into the end zone, and it was caught by Juan Carlos Santana. Just an amazing catch, an amazing play to send it into overtime. Both teams end up kicking a field goal in the first round of overtime, and then now I was on Tulsa minus 5.5 because I was bored on Thursday night and decided to also bet on that game. Minus 5.5. A pick six ends the game with a 6-point win, so Tulsa not only walks off with a pick six, but they cover for a complete comeback turnaround win. 21 points scored in the fourth quarter, 9 scored in overtime. Champions.
Yeah, no, I mean it was a great comeback. You mentioned Zach Brin, third string quarterback, in the fourth quarter, putting up 21 points. Uh, they were down 14-0, came all the way back, down again, came back for that final drive. Also, shout out that wide receiver because I don't know about you, Higgins, but the guitarist Carlos Santana, he's got to be named after him or something. There's got to be some connection there. Huge fan of Juan Carlos Santana for no other reason than the fact that he caught that ball. And Carlos Santana, great guitarist.
Did you see the fly like blue hat with the big red feather that he had after he makes that catch on the sideline? I guess that's like their touchdown hat or
Yeah,
something.
that was
I
great.
loved it. It was a beautiful catch, smooth as hell, just like that hat, and it was a great victory for Tulsa. I'll be interested to see how they can respond from such a interesting win like that, taking three quarterbacks to do so.
Yeah, I mean, Higgins, I gotta be honest with you. I thought this comeback was so great. I didn't even consider putting the Michigan Rutgers game in this spot, and that was an incredible comeback also. But I guess if you're a Michigan fan, you were probably having a heart attack during that one.
Another honorable mention before we get into our ad here, Brett. Cincinnati won. They did not cover, and they purposefully ran out the clock at the 1 yard line instead of scoring on a running on what would have been a rushing touchdown that would have covered. I had them at -4.5, and I kept going to that well. And I said last episode until they burn me, and look what happened.
Well, you know what, Higgins? You know my feelings on players running out the clock, so I don't need to waste
I,
anyone's time with it.
I just wish he accidentally fell in the end zone. Anyways, this episode is presented by Wild CBD. Wild produces the best tasting edibles on the market using real fruit and all natural flavoring. The flavors inspired by the Pacific Northwest, high quality ingredients, real fruit, and consistent dosing. Wild has become one of the leading cannabis edible producers in the country. Wild's new CBD line currently offers real fruit infused gummies in blackberry, huckleberry, lemon, and raspberry, and CBD infused sparkling water in raspberry, lemon, blackberry, and blood orange. Each gummy is dosed with 25 milligrams of CBD and can be purchased in a bottle of 10 or 20. Wild CBD is offering our listeners 30% off their next purchase from wildcbd.com by using the code POD. That's code POD for 30% off your next purchase. Wild CBD products are intended only for use by individuals aged 18 and older. Wild CBD products should only be consumed as directed on the label and should not be used if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. All Wild CBD products are made with ingredients containing 0% THC. Consult with a health professional prior to using Wild CBD in combination with any medications or other dietary supplements. Now, on to the NFL, Brett. We have the Sunday night game going on right now, which is a back and forth affair between the Chiefs and Raiders. The Raiders just took the lead back from the Chiefs. The Chiefs now have the ball early in the fourth quarter. It'll be interesting to see how this game turns out going down to the very end. But Rams versus Bucs on Monday night. What are your thoughts on how that game's going to go?
Well, I think what we've seen with the Bucks this year, Higgins, is as long as they're not playing the Saints, they look pretty good. So I'm leaning that way. I think Brady at home only giving up 4.5 points versus a team that's going to be flying all the way across country. I don't know. I kind of like Tampa in that.
So, looking at the spread, I saw weird patterns that kept me away from it of how for the Rams, for example, they win on their spread, they lose on the spread. They cover, they don't cover. They cover, they don't cover. That's how they've gone the past like 6 weeks. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they win two, they lose two. They win two, they lose two. They've won last week, and this would be their second week in a row if they followed that pattern. It's too weird for me. I'm staying away from it. I've looked into it too weirdly. I am going to be on the over under. You know why? Because the Rams have hit 7 unders in a row. Their defense has just been on fire. They've been locking it down. And it's just been that type of football when you play the Los Angeles Rams. Going down into Tampa Bay, Tom Brady likes to use the clock like that as well. I couldn't see it being under 48, so I'm going to take that. And then you know what? I don't know if they cover, but I'm going to take Tampa Bay on money line as well. I think they are still going to win. I agree with you in terms of uh, they just seem to be better. They're 3-1 at home. The Rams aren't that great on the road. They are 2-3. So I expect those trends to kind of continue, and the Bucs to go to 4-1 at home.
Yeah, I mean, I just think being at home on Monday Night Football helps. I think the Rams traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast helps. And honestly, the Bucks really haven't been that bad except for the two games versus the Saints. Like, two games versus the Saints were really bad. Bears game wasn't great. Other than that, like, they've looked pretty good, so I'm comfortable backing them.
Well, and they had injury problems earlier in the year, but they're mainly over those for now, or from what it seems. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting. So far, the weather looks like it's going to be nice. 80-degree night in Tampa Bay. Much different than it is in a lot of places in the country, but not in Los Angeles anyway. So the Rams shouldn't be an issue for them going to an 80-degree place, even though it's November. It's November, and it's 80 degrees in Tampa Bay.
Thanksgiving week.
Thanksgiving week, which we're going to have some interesting football to talk about on Wednesday in episode 96 for sure. But before we head out of this episode, Brett, I do want to give a sneak preview at something that's happening on Saturday because we're probably not going to have time to cover it in our next episode. And that's the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. fight that's going to be happening. Have you seen the pictures of Mike Tyson? He's ripped. He looks like he's taken this seriously, and Mike Tyson is a terrifying fighter. He is a very, very experienced, had a lot of success at heavyweight, and Roy Jones Jr. only fought once at that weight class. He won the championship belt, but he only fought once at heavyweight. I don't know if Roy Jones Jr. can take on Mike Tyson. I don't care that Tyson's 3 years older than Roy Jones Jr. Tyson's a terrifying man, regardless of what age he is, I think. He's a very, very strong man with a very powerful knockout punch. And that's why he's a 200 favorite, and he's minus 150 to win by a TKO, KO, or a DQ. That's how the books think it's probably going to happen.
Hmm.
We'll see, though. I mean, who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows how hard they go?
I have no idea. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I really have no idea. These are two guys that are way past their prime here, Higgins.
54 and 51 years old.
Oh man. And then the other fight is Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson. So just a really wacky card we've got this weekend.
Yeah, former NBA star Nate Robinson jumped over Dwight Howard, Nate Robinson, versus YouTuber Jake Paul, the younger brother of Logan Paul, who's also done this charity boxing match thing. This boxing match, by the way, is going to be a $50 pay per view if you want to go and watch it. So not only would you be putting money down to bet on it, but you'd also have to be putting money down to buy it as well. An interesting line that I did see, though, Brett, was which of those two fights do you think's going to last longer? I think that Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson has a high probability that it could go the entire length. I don't think it's going to be a very good boxing match. Who knows? If it could. Someone could have been boxing for a while and catches one sleeping and knocks him out. I feel like it could just also be very bad and doesn't get called and goes all the way to the distance and goes to the judges table.
I
And it
just
leads to this. It builds the suspense for the Tyson Jones Jr. fight by going longer. You know what I mean?
That's fair. I I got to be honest with you, Higgins. Whoever had to handicap that bet, like the what bout will last more round, I feel so bad for that guy. Like when he got that job, he probably thought, "Oh boy, I get to handicap like the Super Bowl. Oh man, I'm handicapping the NBA." They're like, "Hey, give us some lines for which fight will last longer, Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. or wait for it." Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson, and that
One of those fights sounds so legit, and the other one sounds like I have no idea what I am going to watch.
Yeah, I really honestly have no idea what to expect in the Jake Paul Nate Robinson fight. I They have odds listed though, so I mean that is incredible.
Nate Robinson plus 145. But they didn't believe in him when he tried to go against Dwight Howard in the slam dunk contest either. I'm not going to find myself on this. I think it'll be entertaining to watch the content that comes out of it, but I think it's something notable to talk about that makes your Saturday of Thanksgiving even more interesting. You want
Hey,
something interesting to talk about at Thanksgiving dinner if you're doing that. Bring up this fight. Find out who thinks who's going to win.
hey, why not? I mean, anytime Tyson gets in the ring, it's news for sure. So I think that's fair.
And it's a non political argument you can have at your Thanksgiving table, courtesy of boxing.
There you go, non-political argument. That sounds pretty good, Higgins. That's actually a great suggestion for no other reason.
Let's get into our Levy lock and pick of the pod, though, going back to Monday Night Football, because that's really the only game we got to talk about. We didn't have odds in college basketball. We'd be a fool to offer a Levy lock or a pick of the pod on conference projections or national championship projections. So we're going to talk about Rams versus Bucs. And Tampa Bay money line minus 220. Like I said, they're 3-1 at home. The Rams are 2-3 on the road. They don't win necessarily on the road, and I think the Bucs, now that they're healthy, they're gonna play really well, and they're gonna get back on the right track. Try to steal this NFC South now that the Saints are seeing what they have with Taysom Hill, even though he played phenomenally today.
Well, the Levy Log's obviously Nate Robinson, and no, no, it's gonna be Tampa Bay minus 4.5. Again, I'm gonna take Tom Brady at home on Monday Night Football versus a team traveling to the East Coast. I just think that's the right play. If it was a touchdown spread, 6.5, I'd probably go the other way, but 4.5. I could see Tampa Bay covering that pretty easily. So that's kind of my expectation. Tampa Bay by a touchdown. So Tampa Bay by 4.5.
I will say, I hope I'm wrong. I would like to see the Rams win, but I think the Bucs are going to win.
Go
Anyways,
root
follow us on
against
social media
yourself.
because when we have odds for Wednesday's games, we'll post them there. I'll make sure that we post them there. At NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page. Not to mention also our YouTube channel where you can watch this entire podcast and clips from it there. This has been episode 95 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.